We need to raise the standard and continue to raise the standard from the ground up.
Your past conditioning, your beliefs, you need to dump that and unlearn it and make room and opportunity for new stuff to come in.
If you're feeling that feeling at all within your gut, you need to go with it.
You have to have those people on your team who are willing to accept the change, because change is frustrating. Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to episode 23 of the Apps and Asphalt podcast. This is Hayden, and I am here with a special guest, Mr. Philip Sessions. Philip, his expertise is in communication, and I'll have him dive in a little bit more to that. But I see this guy all over Facebook, Instagram. You know, he's very connected, and it seems like we run in the same circles as well. So I'm excited to have you on. I enjoyed being on your podcast. Now he's returning the favor, however you want to look at that. And I really appreciate it. You got a lot of great value that I'm excited to pull out of you. Just sitting on the other side this time. So Bill, thanks for jumping on, man. Excited to learn more about you. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, Hayden, appreciate you having me on. So as it was already said, my name is Philip Sessions. I do public speaking and communications coaching. I focus on small business owners in the trades industry to really help them be able to streamline that communication, because I've noticed that a lot of them really struggle with that, and they have all this knowledge in their head, but they don't know how to transfer it as they start building up a team. So I like to come in and help them out with that structure, because I have a corporate background with BMW manufacturing, and also a little bit of structure being an electrical engineer, also by degree and everything like that. I'm a father, husband, Christian, self-development junkie, love fitness, love working out, and really just connecting with people and continuing to help each other grow.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate the introduction. And I want to go back to one thing you said. You know, you said everyone's got, especially these blue collar guys, got a lot of knowledge and they keep it all up here. Why do you think that is?
I think it's kind of twofold. So one, and this goes with any industry, if you have the knowledge, you're the one that's going to get paid the most. And you always think about, oh, I'm going to get paid more. And if I give this knowledge to somebody else, they're going to run off and go start their own business, or they're no longer going to need me. So it's a scarcity mindset. But then the other side of it too is that they really don't know it as well as they think they know it. Because when you go to teach something, you have to be mastered at it. You can't just know it well and be able to do it. You have to have a master level at that, and really to be able to teach it all, to be able to transfer that knowledge. So a lot of these guys end up not knowing it as well as they think they do, and which goes back to that scarcity mindset, and they're afraid that people are going to look at them as an imposter. And so transferring that knowledge, those are the two reasons why it's hard for them.
Yeah, I think the scarcity mindset's a huge problem in the construction space. You know, where we're at right now, I believe there is a shift coming, and we've talked about this a couple times, but we're in a shift right now to where there's the kind of the baby boomer generation, especially in the construction space. Then you got a lot of the younger guys who are in their 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s, who think very differently on how we can work together, how they should run their businesses, or in terms of like partnering up with other companies. And I believe, in my opinion, from experience, kind of the older generation has been very much so. They hang on to the trade secrets. They hang on to what makes their business or what makes them run differently, versus nowadays, I mean, we're sharing information and content and all that all over the social media. So I think we're right in that transition period where it's about to shift over. As far as blue collar and like the communication, why did you decide to go into this specific sector, but also why did you decide to be an expert in communication and coaching?
So why I decided to go with the trades industry and that sector is because I see what's been going on with COVID. I mean, look at the shoving down of higher education. I mean, I have a degree in electrical engineering, and I know plenty of contractors that are 10 years younger than me making more money than me, which is Good for them. It's pretty sad for me when I've got this highly skilled degree and I've got this highly skilled knowledge, but it only goes so far. And the tradespeople, if it weren't for them, my job would not be there. And I saw that as I was going through these different jobs I was in where I was just the engineer, and there was always the joke back and forth. And I'm like, you guys know what you're good at. You know, all that stuff, really putting it all together. I know the theory behind it. I know how it actually works and why we put it together that way, but you know how to do that. And a lot of them would respect me, those guys out in the field, because I didn't come to them as this almighty engineer. And just seeing how those guys worked and how hard they worked, and through COVID, and seeing just how the industry is going right now, that it's a bunch of old people getting ready to retire. I really wanted to make sure this industry could stay on so that America could stay strong. And the reason why I picked communication was because I speak with robots all the time with my job with engineering, logistics, automation, programming, control systems. So automating the process of building cars and delivering parts, kind of like Amazon warehouses. And while that's somewhat fun, I do enjoy that. I do enjoy the problem solving. I'm talking with robots all day, and I wanted to be able to talk with people more and get
Yeah.
on stages. And that's why I created a podcast, and that's why I created my own stage, because I wanted to be able to speak more with people and be able to communicate. And when I learned to communicate, I realized how much that impacted my life, both in a business and personal perspective. And I wanted to be able to help more people with that. And so
Yeah.
that's why I got into it.
Love it, man. In the next 10 years, where do you think the trades industry is going to be? What do you think it's going to be like in the next 10 years, the trade industry, with, a lot of these guys retiring here coming up?
I think there's going to be a little bit of a lull. I think because I'm seeing here in South Carolina where now they're pushing trades industry and all this stuff and go to trade school. And the state, at least our state, is way behind on that. I think we're going to have this huge dip, which is going to be an amazing opportunity for people like you and people that are already in the trades industry, because they'll have that knowledge. They'll have the business already set up, and they're going to be overwhelmed with work, really. So it's going to be awesome as long as you have your systems and processes in place. If you don't, you're also going to suffer a lot. But in maybe 15 years, maybe go a little bit further out, I think the trades industry is going to dominate. Just like right now, that going to college, getting that bachelor's degree is the thing to do right now. That's going to be the trades industry in 10 to 15 years for sure. So this is going to dominate. I think it's going to come back with a resurgence, and everybody's really going to be attracted to that. Unlike right now where it's, oh, blue collar, really? Like you're pathetic, like, which is
Yeah.
not the case at all.
Yep.
But unfortunately, that's what social media and the news push out there, and even the universities.
100%. And that's why, we do, guys like you, guys like us, we put our content and stuff out on social media, because really going into trades, whatever it is the place to be, man. I totally agree with you that there's about to be a lull here, and we're talking about having labor shortage problems now. Just wait in the next 10 years. It's going to be nuts. So what we want to do is help kind of bring the education and the awareness to the surface level of these younger kids coming up, or people who are looking to make a switch over from their, white collar jobs because it's not paying the bills or whatever the reason may be, because there is going to be a huge gap and then a huge opportunity. And if you can figure out how to get into that, you're going to be able to set up yourselves and your family for success, and like even future endeavors like what we're doing, rolling off different ideas or different businesses, because there's going to be a very lucrative business for you. But like I said, you have to have these processes put in place, especially when streamlining communication, because if you don't, then you can have all the work and all the demand you want, but you're going to be running in chaos, which we've unfortunately felt before because we didn't have this figured out. What are some of like the core basic things that when you go to, I guess, assess a company on their current communication standings and what they're currently doing with that kind of process? What do you do, and how do you start that process off?
So I want to kind of just give one thing that anybody can do right now. And this is probably beating a dead horse on your podcast here, but answer the phone.
Love it.
There's been
Love it.
so many people that just don't even answer the phone. I mean, you have a hot lead calling you, want to do the work, and they may even leave you a voicemail, no return. And I promise you are not that busy that you can't return that. And if you are, hire some people real quick.
Yeah.
But as far as some communication tips and sorry, not tips, yes, things that I do. So what I do is I go into these companies, and I'm working with a client right now in the cabinet space. And what we've really done as he's hired on this new estimator is we went through to see, okay, what are you trying to get your estimator to do? What things are you doing right now that you need to offload? And we're trying to figure out, okay, what can they do? So obviously estimating, but is there anything else we can put on her plate at this point, and really going through and figuring out what that is. And so once we identify these opportunities to offload some of that onto this estimator, then we go and say, okay, well, what things is she asking you, or what things will she ask you? What are your operating procedures, and so your SOPs and everything? And we go and dive into that. And if those aren't set up, then what I have told him is like, hey, you go through and kind of talk through it, give her a little bit of training, and let her start documenting that. What does that process look like? Since he's busy, he doesn't have enough time, and then you review it at the end. So you give her the ownership of the job of the SOP, but then you go review it. So she does 95% of the work, and you do the other 5%. The other part of it too is eliminating calls. We were going through, I'm like, hey, she needs to know what the cost is of things. She needs to know what kind of markups you have. And then came about that, hey, we're kind of running dry on work. Okay, well, what's that markup look like? Is that less than what you normally want? If you are 6 months out with work, do you want to mark it up even higher so you're not turning work down necessarily, but you're kind of bidding it high so that people maybe will say, oh, we're going to go with somebody else? Because it's better if you quote a job and don't get it because you're too high, let's say, versus no quoting a job, because then people eventually won't come to you. So we really just kind of step through and see where they're at in their business, what things are their pain points, and then figure out ways to be able to communicate that. Because going back to that estimator, he really struggled with that. He's like, man, she just keeps asking me what the price is on everything. I simply asked, what is the price? Well, I mean, and then he finally was like, I really don't know. All right, well, that's a problem. And then
That's
we went through
probably
the whole margins and everything like that. And so really stepping through that, so that way they can make sure they can get at least 90% of it done on their own and ask for those special scenarios and everything.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, man. And a lot of our audience, and especially like for Spot On Site, our tech company, the guys that we really talk to the most are going to be at kind of at that owner operator level, to where they're out in the field, they're in the office, they do the hiring, the firing, the marketing, the sales, the estimating, they jump on the equipment, and they're, actually producing the work. So these guys don't even think to scale themselves. They need to start documenting the processes. And we talk about using Loom a lot to start documenting literally everything that you do. You need to start getting out of your head. But in order to start scaling your business and taking the first step, if you do feel like you run 1,000,000 miles an hour, you don't have any free time, you need to bring that person on. And part of that initial person that you're going to bring on, one of those early hires, is going to be probably a person that's going to be with you for a while, because you give them the power to build some of these SOPs and these processes. You give them the power to build the department, so to speak, so that way you can eventually scale it. So it's really important to invest into these early people that you bring on, but also empower them to, give them as much information as you can, but empower them to build out some sort of process that they want, which I think is going to help with buy-in with your employees as well.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, when you're a smaller company, it's you, maybe one or two other employees, you are giving them a lot of different tasks. But the thing that you need to start communicating is, hey, we're here. This is what we're going to do right now. But as we build out, I want to make sure that you get to stop doing the things that you don't want to do. Just like you delegated a lot of work that you didn't want to do, which to me should be things that are non-money making activities. I would start with that and then go to the money making activities. So sales is something that you should keep. Prospecting probably is something that you should keep as well. Having those executive decisions is something you need to keep, but admin work, I mean, estimating, that's kind of, you could keep it, maybe you give it to them, but then you make that final decision on that. And project management is something maybe that you can hand over to them, but find those non-money making activities that you can hand off to them. But as you start getting to a point where their load is getting maximized as well, have those conversations with them and say, hey, what things do you really enjoy? What things do you not like? What things do you want to start doing or learning? And that way they get more of that buy-in, because they're the first ones of your company. You should love on them and support them and give them everything that they want so they can continue to grow. Because as humans, we want to continue to grow and develop and be able to do the things that we truly want to do. So if you
Yeah.
come in as an employer, as a business owner, and tell them, hey, I know we've got you doing these 3 or 4 things. Which things do you like? Tell me the order that you like them. And as you hire another person, try and pass off some of that to them. Unless if you have a bunch of other work, then maybe you're not passing it off yet. But once you get to that point where you can start having people more specialize in 1 or 2 things instead of 3 or 4, start passing off the things that they don't like. And also, especially that first hire somebody that's the opposite of you. You don't want a
Mm,
duplicate of you. That is the worst thing that you can do. Although as a human, we're like, oh, I like that person. Hey, Dan, he's
yeah.
just like me. He's great. No, you want the opposite, because then they're going to be just like you. They're not going to want to do the things you don't want to do as well. And then everybody's just doing it halfway. They're not doing it well at all.
I like how you bring that up, man. And a lot of times, especially early on, everyone's wearing multiple hats. So job descriptions get a little blurry, which I believe can lead to frustration because you were hired for this and you end up going into something that you don't even know or didn't even want to be doing. And that's what I think leads to a lot of turnover in businesses
Mhm.
early on, because these people are coming in and taking on responsibilities and roles that they shouldn't be doing. And I think that's a good way to put that. Going back to, figuring out money making versus non-money making activities. Do you what do you how does somebody find that out? Like, do they do a time audit? If they do a time audit, what does that kind of look like? How do you teach people how to figure that out?
So time audit would be a good way to see what you're doing personally and what takes the most time. So I think from a delegation perspective, that would be one part for you. So I think that's a great thing to do, but really go through and you have to think from a 30,000-foot view. What are the activities that are actually helping me move that needle forward? Yes, I need to do my taxes, and I'm not saying don't do your taxes, but that's not a money making activity right there. So you can probably get that out to a CPA or something like that. Okay. Sales, that's obviously, if you're getting in front of a customer, that's going to make you money. If you're just doing some admin work, that's not making you money. Yes, it's something that's needed to be done, but that's not something that's going to make you money. So one way you can help yourself get into this mindset is to think about, if my back was against the wall and I wasn't going to make payroll in the next week, what would I do right now?
Mm,
And that should give you some keys right there to help you be able to figure out what are those money making activities. And I went through with my client actually here recently to talk about that. Like, hey, what are these money making activities for you right now? Because he's trying to build the cabinets, he's trying to sell the cabinets, he's also trying to delegate work to the estimator, he's doing design, he's doing all of these things. And really, we actually had him not do one of them because this estimator's been on long enough and she's actually closing more deals than he is. So I was like, hey, you need to allow her to be in front of the customers. She's already estimating, she's getting her name out there. You go to the customer and be the face of it, but let her do the estimate, let her do the quoting on all of that. And then he was also looking at, because he does cabinets for hotels as well. And he
okay.
was like, well, maybe I'll go do that. And I was like, well, she's closing a little bit more than you. Maybe we allow her to do that. So I'm kind of being contradicting here, but you also need to take a look and see where your skill set is at. And so he's a little bit better on the strategy side of things and more big vision versus the tactical here, the day and now. But really just go through and figure out what those money making activities are for yourself. And if you were up against a wall, you weren't about to make payroll, what are those things that come to mind right now for you? And those are the things that you should keep yourself, unless it's somebody's just a rock star at it and you already have that person in place. But if you don't have anybody in place, then yeah, or you have a person in place but they're just getting started, don't give them those to start.
Yeah, that's great points. And it's just, I mean, Tim Ferriss with a 4-hour work week, it's not necessarily, he talks about outsourcing a lot of stuff. Especially early on, if you can't necessarily afford to pay somebody a full-time salary, I think there's plenty of assistants or virtual assistants that you can hire that can help take away some of this admin stuff, or even some of the stuff that you're not good at. I totally agree. Everyone's got a skill set. The problem I think people fall into the trap with is that they have to do everything for such a long period of time that they feel like when they let it go, that they're giving up, control. And unfortunately, it's kind of like a pride thing. I've been doing it for so long. This is what I built it up to. So now I got to hand over the keys to let somebody drive this car that I've been driving the whole time. So giving up control is a huge piece into moving your business forward, but it is a very scary thing. When we're talking about like communication, you think about the trades industry and the process of, we'll call it a job or a customer process, the process for a customer from, sending an original estimate all the way through sending the final invoice once the work is completed. Where in that process do you believe is like the biggest communication gap and the most amount of errors that happen?
That's a good question. It's hard to not
Stumped
say.
you.
Yeah, it's hard to not say all of it, but I would really say up front.
Okay.
Too often we don't ask enough questions up front. We make a lot of assumptions, and we know what that does to us. So we need to make sure that up front we're asking a lot more questions. And I'll kind of give a scenario here, and this goes really into when you're delegating work or you're telling somebody what they need to do.
Yeah.
My wife and I, and this is obviously just a scenario here at the house, but we had this ant infestation at one point, and there was ants in the dog food. And so we have dog food there in the breakfast nook as well as in our laundry room. So we have the dog food bowl where he eats, and then we have the dog food container where all the food stores up until we go pour more into the dog food bowl.
Yep.
And I saw it in that dog food container, and I said, "Oh my gosh, there's ants in the dog food." And then wasn't 15 minutes later, my wife comes by. She's like, "Oh my gosh, there's ants in the dog food container." I'm like, "That's what I said." And I'm supposed to be this communication coach, yet I just said dog food. And so she thought I meant the dog food bowl when I really meant the dog food container. And so I had this information in my head, but I didn't share that with her. And so I didn't over communicate that. And so that's why I say at the beginning, when you are going in and you're getting the job and you're trying to make sure everything's there, this helps the whole process be smooth because you can know exactly what that customer wants by asking questions. And the way you go about asking those questions is just you can even just flat out say, "Hey, I don't want to assume anything here. I just want to make sure that I have everything for you," because I know some people go and do a lot of research, some people don't. But let me ask you a few questions, and whatever those specific questions are that you need to ask within your industry, you go and ask those and preface that like, "Hey, I don't want to make you feel dumb or like you don't know anything, but I just need to make sure that I have everything right, so that way when we go through this process and actually build the cabinets for you or lay out this slab for you, that it's going to be exactly what you wanted at the end." So I would say the beginning is the most important part of that whole process of having a project.
I love where you took that, man. And I'm going to relate this to our industry, the asphalt industry specifically. So I would agree with you. Up front is where the biggest communication gap is. or one of the biggest. I believe the biggest in our industry is called the handoff from sales or estimating to operations and production. And why that is because of what you just said, is our estimators or companies estimators don't ask enough questions up front. They don't take the time to find out really, simple stuff like what days are the trash days, who controls the sprinklers, what are the best days to perform this work. The small stuff that you find out up front, or that you should find out up front, will lead to more of a successful project, because you have that information, you're able to pass it off. So the handoff portion of it is a huge gap. And small details, because they're not documented properly during the estimating and scoping portion, are not documented effectively, and they're not given to operations, which is not handed down to the crew, to the superintendents, which is missed by the foreman. And that's what leads to rework. And it's something as small as, hey, this lady is the board president of this HOA and she wants her stripes yellow in front of her space instead of white. Well, God forbid you stripe it, you forget to communicate that, you stripe it white, you get done with the project, think all is great. That's the one issue that's going to come up later on that you have to go and do rework for, or warranty work, as we call it, which is going to cost you time and money. So it's the small details, like you said, that you need to gather up front. And don't be afraid to ask your customers a lot of questions, or your prospects, because, this is all going to tee you up for a successful project down the road. And as we know, construction's already, there's a million different stakeholders involved in a simple construction project. There's a million different logistics of it. So over communicate the details. So that way, if you do drop the ball somewhere in line, you know directly who to point a finger at and how to correct it.
Yeah, and I always see between the salespeople and we'll call them the operators, the people that actually do the work, and I say that in quotes because there is work that's done from the sales side as well.
Yeah.
But it's a huge disgruntle that happens within companies, and that destroys your company culture, because you have the salespeople that, man, they just sold it, they got this fat commission check, and they don't even care anymore. It doesn't matter what happened to the project, they got their commission check, that's all that matters. And then we're over here, we're having to bust our butts to make sure this gets done right, and we're having to bend over backwards just to do it because this is what was sold, and we can't go back and say, well, hey, we can't do that. And so you have this whole discord within your company culture. So having these questions up front, and that could even be a literal questionnaire, like, hey, this is what we do. It doesn't matter if it's a $10,000 job or $1 million job. We go through and ask these questions because, and you can blame it on past experiences. Hey, because we've had bad experiences in the past and we like to learn from our experiences rather than go through them again. We want to ask all these questions. So if you got about 5 minutes, let me ask those. And that's, permission sales, all that good stuff. But it lets people know that you're actually paying attention, because that's the bad stigma that I believe a lot of blue collar businesses have, is that they don't pay attention to details. It's like, oh yeah, okay, cool, I'll do that. And it's like, you're not actually paying attention to me. You don't care about me. And so doing that, it will also show that customer that you truly care about them and their project, no matter the size.
And here's a little tip for everybody. It's not how good the cabinets look at the end of the day. It's not how black your parking lot is. It's, did you execute on the details that they wanted? That's what they will care about. And that will always come back. And I agree, there is, in a lot of companies, including ours, we had to really bridge that gap between sales and production, because there is, for whatever reason, a negative stigma of one versus the other. Sales guys are just the guys that just make all the money, get the commissions. They don't work that hard. And productions go and they mess jobs up all the time, and they just are lazy. And there's a huge stigma. So how are some ways that you've been able to teach customers, your customers anyways, which are companies, how do you teach kind of mending those two major divisions together to work together as a team?
Something that you could do, I haven't done this yet. Nobody's been brave enough to do it. But what you could do is actually put an operations person in there in the sales world, have them go out with them for a day, and then vice versa. So they start to see that, because there's nothing better than allowing a person to be in somebody else's world, to wear their shoes, to see how it feels and how that shoe fits and everything. So I think that's one way that you can do that. And another way is really just coming together as a whole team. Sales really does a great job with this, with meeting daily or weekly or whatever that is, where they meet and they have these huddles and they're really kind of helping each other get ramped up for the week, because sales is brutal. You're getting no all the time, where operations is like, hey, we're just doing the job. We're getting the work done. We get to see a good result, where sales is such a long lead time. So you have to have that encouragement. But if you bring that whole team together, and not just at a Christmas party, like, and not just a pizza party every once in a while, actually bring the team together, doing some kind of activity is a great way that I've used to really help bond teams together. Because until they really know what each other are doing and until they know each other, they're not going to do well together, because they're always going to stay separate, because that's just how it is. And that's really how the company split up in these divisions. So the more you can help them be cross-functional or cross each other's path, the better. So doing some kind of party, some kind of get together, whatever you can do, have them go, work with the sales guy for the day, go work in operations for the day, kind of thing like that, because it is an inefficient thing and it is going to cost you money and not make you money. But at the end of the day, it's more efficient that way, because even if it's only one or two salespeople, or two operations people, you don't do everybody that goes back and forth. They'll start talking to each other like, oh my gosh, I had no clue that they had to deal with terrible customers like that. And they're actually protecting us from these terrible jobs that they're expecting all of these things, but they don't want to pay any money. And it's a rush project and they end up just declining it or doing whatever to make sure that we don't get it. And then, oh man, these operations guys, they're kicking butt. They're putting themselves on the line. They're always working hard, trying to make sure that they get every detail right. And it just creates stories that then especially the salespeople can go share about the operations team, but then the operations can also share about the sales, and they can talk amongst each other and build up that credibility and that know, like, and trust and rapport amongst the different organizations within your business.
I think that's a great point. And in my opinion, your department heads or your leadership team should know what the other departments, what's all entailed on a day-to-day basis. And I'll give you just an example of our company. So we recently just hired a new operations manager, and he is from within, and his name's Gabriel. So Gabriel's been in the field for 20 something years, and he's not as old as he sounds. He's really pretty young, but he's just been doing this for forever. He's been in the field, an amazing operator, very great out in the field. He was moved up to our superintendent. And when I was estimating, I'd go check on him on job sites, and he'd be like, why didn't we, do a full depth removal here? Like, this is the way to do it. Or why can't we just mill and overlay this whole park? And I'm like, you don't understand. These guys have a budget, and part of estimating, you have to make room and make do with what they have with their budget. And so fast forward a year and a half later, he moved up to estimating. And when he saw all that I did, he kind of got thrown into the world of what I was doing and understanding, like, you got to work customers' budgets. You got to create the scope of work. You're driving around from job site to job site like you're going crazy. He literally came to me, he's like, Hayden, I now understand why you are so busy and why sales is so crazy as well. He goes, I'm still busy. It may not be like as physically tiring as what I was doing out in the field, but mentally I am like way more drained. So he sees that, and now we had an opportunity for him to move up to operations. And so now he can see the full picture, because he knows what it's like to be in the field on the ground level. He knows what it's like to manage the field. He knows what it's like to be in the sales position. So now, him being in operations, he can literally weld the departments together and understand the different facets of what happens on the job site, what happens in the pre-construction phase when you're building it out. So I think even just a day of walking in each other's shoes is powerful. And I think that's a great thing that you brought up, because it can make or break, and it can really open the eyes to one another, maybe take away any animosity that was present.
For sure. I want to ask you a question real quick, because this guy has obviously moved up the ranks, so to say. Is that something that you purposely do, or that just kind of happened to be with this guy?
You know what? It kind of happened, especially like coming into this operations department, full transparency. But in the field, I was always talking about wanting him to move up to estimating, and started to get more serious about it. He ended up doing it, and first year he sold just under 2 million, and then the next year he sold, I think, like 7 million, and it was the top salesman. So it's kind of crazy how it happened.
Man.
It's crazy that you just having loyalty. Like, he's extremely loyal to our company. He's been with us for probably as long as I've been with the company. And these guys that stick around, you want to continue to see and find the right seat for them. And sometimes it takes a little period of time for them to be sitting in a different seat that might not be like the end all seat for him. A lot of guys think just because you're the greatest sales, if you're a great salesman, you must be a great manager, when that's not always the case. And so it's really just trial and error with some people in your company. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great thing, man. And you really hit a huge point, that it creates buy-in from them, and you used a different word there, but it really creates that buy-in for the people that are working there at your company. And that's something that you, as a business owner, or your leadership team, really both of you, but as you grow, obviously if you got 100 people in your organization, you're not really talking with these people that are on the ground floor and everything, but your organization, your leadership team should be having these conversations with your workers to see if, like, hey, where do you want to progress? Is going back to what I said earlier. Everybody wants to get better. Everybody wants to improve. And of course, people want to get paid more. So have those conversations like, hey, here's the things that I need to see from you in order for you to get paid more. Here's the things that you need in order to be able to move to this next role.
Yeah.
And then maybe you have to take a little bit of a sidestep here to learn this other aspect of the business before I can move you up to this management role, or whatever that different role is, and let them know up front. In having these conversations, it may be once a month, it may be every other week, it may be weekly, whatever it is that you can really schedule out. I would suggest a minimum of once a month, but really shoot for every other week, if not weekly, having these conversations. And so as your company grows, obviously you're not speaking to as many people, and you're allowing that leadership team, but going through and having that, because if people can see a future with the company, which is you having those conversations and bringing out what they want in the future, then you're going to have more buy-in from your employees than if you don't do that with them. And that's a big reason why we have so much turnover, is because we don't have these conversations. We just assume that the employee's happy. We just assume that the employee wants to stay there. And if they want to stay there, that's great. Make them happy, make sure that they get everything they want in that role. There's plenty of people that just want to be the worker bee. They just want to work with their hands. They don't care to be in sales or management, and that's fine. But the people that do want that, help them be able to get there and show them what that path looks like.
If you're an owner and you're bringing in a new employee, you want to kind of have that conversation with them on, learn a little bit more about them and what their goals are, where they see themselves within the company and climbing the ranks. Where do you think is a good place to start? Is that kind of like within the first week during the interview, or is it a consistent thing that you're constantly checking in with them in order to keep pushing them towards growth?
Yeah, if they haven't been in the company yet, I would start with that interview, because then you can know real quick if they're just there to get a paycheck for a few months or maybe a year and they're moving on. So you can automatically get rid of them within reason. I understand right now hiring people is definitely a tough thing, getting good work, and maybe a year is fine. You have to figure out what that is for your business. But that's a very expensive part, is hiring people. So asking that question up front, like, hey, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? And if they have somewhat of a vision, then, like, hey, this is somebody that I can lead into this and have them buy into the company. But if they're like, I'm not really sure, then that's not somebody you want to hire, because they're literally just there to get a paycheck. They don't really care about the work. They don't care about the company. They just want to get a check. And so I would
100%.
ask that. Yeah, in that interview process. But if you have people that are already in the company, start trying to do that now. It's okay to say, hey, we're trying to implement a new process. I want to make sure that everybody is happy within the company. And again, be transparent with this. There's nothing better than to be transparent with everybody. And don't necessarily say the word transparent, because that, if you start saying, when you say something and, oh, well, just to be transparent with you, that tells me that anything I said right before I said I'm just being transparent with you means that I wasn't telling you the whole truth. So don't
Mm.
say I want to be transparent with you. Just tell them. They know it's the truth. They have no reason why to not believe you unless if you've done something to do that. But just tell them everything. Well, maybe not everything, but tell them within reason everything that you can to help them get that buy-in within the company, but start asking those questions and giving them that space, because that first time you do it, they're going to be like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. I don't know what Hayden wanted. Like, is he just trying to figure out if I'm happy in my role? Like, is he trying to get rid of me? Like, what's going on here? Am I in trouble? So you're
Yeah.
going to have several of these conversations, but as you keep bringing that up, eventually they're going to realize, okay, Hayden actually wants to know what I want to do within the company. And you may have the thing where they're like, hey, in the next 3 years, I really want to start my own business. That's a different conversation too. So you got to be ready for that as well and have that conversation and just say, hey, and depends on you where you're at. But I would say, hey, we're going to support you. But look, I need you here 100%. If we need to figure out the hours, we can figure that out. But let's have that conversation before that happens, because I want to make sure that when you do leave here, we leave on good terms. And then also you have a good ramp to go off of as well, because they're going to report back to you in the long run. Maybe not report back to you, but they'll talk about you to other people out in your city, in your state, and you'll get that credibility within that your culture is great, that you're a great leader and everything, or that you're a terrible leader and you don't even care about your employees. So which one do you
Yep.
want to be known for?
Yep. You can set the standard both ways, whatever you choose.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love what you're talking about. Like, a big thing that just chaps my butt is when that's the first question when you're hiring somebody, whether it's a laborer, whether it's just any kind of employee. If that person asks, "What's the pay?" and that's their first question out of their mouth, move on. That is
Yeah.
not the person you want. I don't care whether it's a guy raking asphalt or it's one of your, top level managers. Like, that is not a person who is there and buying into your company culture, your vision, and that's what you need to start building. And a lot of times contractors feel pressured, I feel, to bring on people who even do ask these questions, or they don't have a good gut feeling about them, but they're in a pinch because they need people. And so they bring that person on, they somewhat onboard them, or they don't even onboard them at all, and they just throw them in. And then sure enough, 2 weeks later, or even the same week, they're gone.
Yeah.
So, we still have this problem as well. It's a hard thing to figure out because everyone is so busy. But when you are bringing on new employees, you have to make the conscious effort to onboard them properly, find out a little bit more about what seat they want to be in the next couple of years. So, last question for you, and I know it's getting late on your side.
Yeah. Well, let me interject there real quick. I want to mention one thing. When you're hiring, you can teach skill. You can teach skill all day long. And I get it. It's easier on you as the business owner to be able to have somebody that has the skills to come in because they can hit the ground running.
Yep.
But if they don't have that character, you're going to have so many more problems. And it's just going to kill your company culture. And we all should know this, and it's tough because we're human, but the easy thing now is the hard thing later. So do the hard thing now and say no to that person that has the amazing skill set. They have 40 years of experience and they're only 30 years old. Like, they just have all this phenomenal experience, but they have the worst character ever. It doesn't matter how great they are. Everybody else is going to be worse because of that. But if you come in here with somebody that's got great charisma, great character, and they maybe don't have the skill set, I guarantee the people that they're working with will want to work with them, and they'll probably even help them learn the things as well. So you're not even going to do all the teaching. So hire for character, not for skill set.
I love that. The easy thing now is the hard thing later. I think that might be the title of this episode. Quoted
There
by
we go.
Phil Sessions. Love it. Love it, man. I think that's a phenomenal point too. Phenomenal point. Don't sacrifice, this for the other goal. The bad that you see will come out, will surface eventually. So last question, top, I don't know, 2 or 3 books, favorite books that contractors should use or that they should read in regards to communication.
Most of mine have been a little bit more scholarly, I guess, that I've read. I'm terrible with giving names.
Well, how about this? We'll make it easier. Your top 2 favorite books that you've ever read.
So I liked Marketing Secrets by Jim. I'm frankly out his name too, but it's one.
Marketing.
What was that?
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. It really helps you out with understanding how to talk with customers, more from a marketing and sales perspective, but you can really take that to really help you with your online social media post. And then, I mean, maybe it's a cheesy plug by my little book over there, Mindset Over Motivation. That's a good one because mindset is such a important thing for you. But I'll throw that as the cheesy plug. But I like The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy as well. I think it's an easy read. It's one that will really help you understand that these little things can add up to be very big things in a good way or very big things in a bad way. So if you just do little things that negatively impact your employees over time, it's going to be a huge thing that you didn't even realize happened until it becomes this huge thing, or it can be a great thing and your company can do so much better because of that.
Love it, man. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for jumping on and staying the late hours of the night. Where can everyone find you? I know you have a podcast as well, but where can people find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, so the podcast is Speaking Sessions. The Facebook page that you can go to is The Real Philip Sessions. So that's Philip with 1 L. And you can find me over at LinkedIn at Philip Sessions as well.
The real one, not the fake one, guys.
Yeah.
Phil, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for jumping on. This was awesome. I think you get a lot of value out of just clear communication. It's something I think that's extremely overlooked in business, but especially in the trades industry and the blue collar industry. So guys, if you need help with your communication and you need coaching on that, Phil's your guy. Check his content out. He's got a lot of great stuff. But thank you guys for jumping on. This is episode 23 of the Apps and Asphalt podcast with Philip Sessions. Thanks, guys.